We're really glad to be here with y'all tonight.
So thank you, everybody. Thanks to Rosa for having us.
Yes.
This is Paige Dukes. She's local. She's my partner. She's going to be moderating tonight, having a conversation with Michelle Daniel Jones and Miss Elizabeth Nelson and Anastazia Schmid. So we're very excited about this book, and we're very honored to have them here talking about it tonight. So thank you for being here.
We're glad to be here.
As Lucy said, I'm Paige. I know a lot of you. Thank you for coming. And yes, we are so glad that we could have this event here at For Keeps. Didn't know it was a 5th year anniversary, but this looks such a liberatory and community hub. So we definitely wanted to have it here. And thank you for hosting us. And thank you guys for coming. I know you're in town for NCHEP. And
Does everybody know what NCHEP is?
the National Conference for Higher Ed in Prison. I'm sure a lot of you guys in the audience also may be here for NCHEP. I don't know that for sure, but I know some of you are. And while me and Lucy are not going to NCHEP for the reasons that we outlined in the statement, because of the Alliance's refusal to issue a statement of solidarity with Stop Cop City, which is actually holding a Block Cop City weekend right now. This weekend, people are coming to put their bodies in the forest to try and stop the deforestation and stop them from building this massive militarized police training facility and expanding policing and incarceration in the city. That said, there is a statement you guys may have already read while you're waiting on us, but there's more seats up here. Okay, come right in. Speaking of movement leaders. But while you guys are in town, we are so happy to have you here to do this event about this book in particular, Who Would Believe a Prisoner? I was just telling Anastasia and Elizabeth that I first found out about the Indiana Women's Prison History Project when I was in college. It was my first year out of prison, and I was watching the MUMI conference virtually from my college newsroom. And, I was just really learning to question the subjugation of our knowledge as formerly incarcerated, currently incarcerated people. And I really thank you guys for teaching me so much about standing up for the validity and the authority of our collective consciousness around carcerality. And I know Michelle because we worked together on a project called Mourning Our Losses.
She's representing. I love that.
And there's several other members of Mourning Our Losses in the audience. So happy that you guys are here. Kirsten, this is the first time we've seen each other in person.
Oh
and
my
we've
God, it's Kristen Pickering. Hi!
So we've been working together since 2020. Really, Mourning Our Losses got started from a place of defeat when we realized that prisons and jails and detention centers were going to do nothing to protect people in their custody from COVID-19. And so we founded the website as a space to memorialize people as their full selves and their full humanity, because they were appearing as a name on a dashboard, or if we knew anything about them, it was their charges. And also as a space for the disenfranchised grief of all the people who were mourning them. And I think that was a moment where, everybody was separated from their people who were dying, like who were in hospital, couldn't be there. And this is the experience of people who die in prisons every day, like their family can't come and be in the hospital with them. Mourning Our Losses has since expanded our mission to memorialize everybody dying in prisons and jails, from all of the things that the PIC does to kill people that's only been exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right.
And so, Michelle, that is just one of many things, many projects that you are involved with. And we got to have our first in-person traveling memorial exhibit in Chicago. Yes.
Makes me want to holler, y'all.
Yeah, so hoping to bring that to Atlanta next year. So very excited about that. All right, so the Indiana Women's Prison History Project. First, I would just love it if you guys could tell us a little bit about the project and how you got involved in it in the first place.
Anna, you want to start? Or you want me to start?
Go ahead, you start.
Okay.
start. I'll go from there.
And you'll finish it, that's right. The tag team. So the Indiana Women's Prison History Project started as a regular class for undergraduates. And Kelsey Kaufman, the faculty member, decided to pair folks like me and Anastazia, who already had our degrees, bachelor's degrees, with undergrads, so we could work together to do the research based on our interests. Anastasia had an interest in medicalization and eugenics. Some people were interested in what did the women do with their food, what happened to the babies, were people researching history. Oh yeah, and we're okay. So essentially, yeah, back up. So we're at the very beginning. So we were researching the history of the prison in which we were located in. The prison in which we were located in is the first public prison for women in the United States. A lot of folks think it's the one in Boston. It's actually the Indiana Women's Prison in Indianapolis, Indiana, weirdly, right? And it was started by two Quaker women who really believed that they were creating a true prison reform by removing the women from the co-ed facility with men in Jeffersonville. Several of those women were sexually violated. There was children born in the area. Guards had open use of the women in the facility. And so they saw it as a reform to take those women out of that facility and put them in an institution of their own so that they could be reformed, right? And the reform, so that was what we were studying. We broke out into groups based on what we were interested in studying, and then we would come together and have what we called meta discussions. So you would bring your economic studies, or you would bring medicalization, and someone else would bring the architect, and someone would talk about what happened with the women in their educational level. Like some people came in literate, some people came in able to read and write. Who were those? What was the race of those folks? And I was interested in the demographics of the women in general, like from short soup to nuts, like how old they were, what race, what religious background. And so we would come together, have these meta discussions, and then break out and write. And the goal by Kelsey Standard was to make one little pamphlet that would, right? You look at this, right? One little pamphlet in a couple semesters. But you know what happened? We got excited about what we were researching. We got interested in doing deeper dives. And so as the undergraduates went on the other classes, folks like Anastasia and myself stayed with the project and continued to do our research and ask more questions.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just about getting excited about what we were researching, it was about what we felt were blatant disparities in the historical prisons archive and what our own experience was as incarcerated women currently, particularly because it was the very same institution that we were looking at. So it's also kind of amusing because yes, this grandiose idea that we were going to write a pamphlet that more or less mirrored the dominant narrative about the facility, which was a very feel-good story. Here were these wonderful Quaker reformers and they did this great shit protecting women, from sexual violence and whatever. And the idea of a pamphlet, because IWP is the first women's prison in the country and was and still is seen as very progressive, people from all over the world tour this prison all the time. I mean, almost like we're zoo animals. Let's come on in and see what we're doing. So we're going to make this pamphlet to give to all these people who tour it and whatever. Right. And, very quickly on, we saw what we're looking at and what we're reading is not matching our own reality. And that is what started causing us to dive deeper.
Right. And I think that we were incarcerated in a considerable progressive era that started with Dana Blank, who ran the facility for 26 years and moved into a superintendent named Mr. McCauley, who finished, we had him about 6 or 7 years. But the point the reason why I'm saying that is that's not Indiana Women's Prison today. There has been a definitely retrenchment in creating a ultra violent, negative carceral space for women. And that's part of the reason why Mourning Our Losses came into existence. I mean, we did press conferences outside that facility to talk about the dehumanizing conditions that they were leaving these women in under COVID, right? So it was progressive, it is no longer progressive. So I just want to make sure we understand that nuance there.
And let me just say quickly, because people are probably like, who the hell is she?
Who is she?
So Kelsey Kaufman was the faculty founder, facilitator of the project for many years, and she moved to California. So she was looking for someone who could come in and step into that role and help to facilitate, the movement of research materials from the inside to the outside to in. And work with the different scholars, mentoring them as they're, interpreting evidence and writing their chapters. So she contacted me because I'm a researcher. My background is as a historian. My specialty is the history of mental hospitals, which have a lot of parallels with prisons. And so I started working with the group in 2018. So that's how I fit into it.
And by that time, we had secured a book deal.
Yeah.
So I mentioned that I first learned about you guys like right after I got out of prison, and I was going back to school. I had, tried to start going to school. I was in prison. That was very hard at that time. There were no college programs in Georgia prisons. But I was, navigating what we call reentry, and there are so many, I think, terms that you guys coined that gave me language for structures that I was coming up against and struggling with and analyzing in my own life. And one that I thought was really interesting, well, there's a couple of them, but biographic mediation. You talk about how our lives and the way that we tell our stories is really controlled by institutional agents. And so I'm going to read a little bit here. When a person has completed a sentence and been released, a university admissions office can demand that the hopeful student produce officer arrest reports and court documents that narrate their conviction through the lens of criminality. And from this vantage point, institutions create the frameworks within which we must tell our stories. And I'm just curious, having this project that you started from the inside, were you able to think about this before you got out and think about the way this was going to impact your lives even after you had done this amazing work inside? Or is that something that you really weren't able, or is it something that happened after you were released?
No, I think that we, particularly someone like me who did 20 years and 7 months, I saw reentry failure constantly. And when I talk to folks, they're like, why, what's going on? Oh, I'm discriminated in this situation, couldn't get housing. Oh, I'm discriminated in this. My parole officer didn't like that I was working at this job and wouldn't let me get promoted to go to another district, and so he stopped me from receiving a promotion, and I got so angry that and I failed in this situation, and on and on and on, right? Institutions and carceral agents specifically often, I'm not going to say 100% of the time, but often control how we are viewed within the systems in which we're trying to receive resources and support. If their voice goes before ours, and then we spend the rest of our energy trying to be heard and seen as an individual after they've already tainted the floor we're supposed to be walking on, right? And so biographic mediation, I found the language from that from reading Ebony Kolatu's work. And so biographic mediation comes from her, but she applied it differently. I applied it to the carceral state because it really fit with what was going on with us. That other institutions, other entities, other carceral agents could speak more authoritatively about who I am and my right to access to resources than I can. And that was a problem because we all ran into that coming out of incarceration. And it's fucked up.